All right, welcome to the homework problem, the time question. So we're gonna go over the question, and how I kind of like to think about is this problem is not really as much of a time problem, but more of a medium, a small, a medium, and a large set. So me personally, I'm a cook. So there's this thing in cooking called mise en place, which means you gotta gather all your ingredients, gather all your planning before you even introduce a knife to an ingredient, because you want to have everything ready. So, for example, when you have all your knowledge before you even begin writing your code, it'll be so much easier. So, with that in mind, let's start doing our mise en place. What do we know? We know that we have a starting date and we have an end date. And our goal is to find the mid date. Now, without even thinking about time, calendar, days, let's just think of it as absolute values. What does that mean? That an absolute value, if this was an array, January 1st, or the starting date, will be position 0. And because the year 2020 is a leap year, we know that there's an additional day between February 29th. That means that instead of April 1st being the 90th day, it's the 91st day. 91st day. Now, let's do a little bit of quick math. You do the maximum minus the minimum, which is, in this instance, is just 91 minus 0, which is 91. 91, and of course, use divided by 2 to get the middle point. And now, but what does that mean exactly? That means that in between this point, and this point is this value right here. That's the value that we're finding. So let's figure it out. So 91 divided by 2 is approximately 46. What does that mean now? That is the 46th day or the 46th value in our array. And the 46th, and now we translate that into calendar time. We now know that that is actually February 15th. Now we've gathered more ingredients. We've gathered the beginning date, January 1st, the end date, April 1st, and the middle date, February 15th. All right. With that being, now that we've done our mise en place, we can code it. So the main constructor, in this instance, the recipe to build dates is like this. You have your date method, and it has years, months, days, and there's this thing called UTC, or Universal Time. The C stands for something, I can't recall it in memory, but it's the time that the developers use in order to measure time. It's like a universal clock. That's the one that measures the entire world. There's no PST, EST, Central Time, or no any other type of time. There's just UTC, which is 1 hour from left and right as it goes, either negative or positive, depending on which side of the world you are, and it's constant. Now that we know that, and it goes like this. It goes with the hour, the minutes, and the seconds, and the milliseconds. All right, we got a recipe to construct the date. Now, what do we know again? We know that our start date, we're going to create that into a variable in order to pass on our little recipe. Let new date be set to 2020 January 1st, and we know it because it was given to us at 0, 0, 0, and we're starting at midnight. Now, here's the trick. Of course, we're not going to write January. When it comes to this constructor, there's a list of arrays that considers the months. So this is what it looks like. You have an array of January, February, March, and April, and so on, right? So just like in any other array, the first position is 0, the second is first, the third is 2, and the fourth is 3. So once again, what do we know? We know we're starting at the first, and we're going to the third position in that character spectrum. So let's rewrite our ingredients. Instead of having January, we're going to have a 0. And now we're going to have our end date. And we're going to call this end. Let end be set to new date 2020. And it's the fourth position in an array, which translates to 3. We're doing April 1st. So, and once again, 0, 0, 0. Now, with that information in mind, we're just simply going to find the mid value again. So we're going to have set let mid be set to end date minus start over 2. Now, let's console log that. And once we console log it, mid, we get a strange output. And that is 392940000. Now, what does that mean? That simply means that there's this amount of milliseconds in between the starting date and the middle date. So how do we find the middle date? We go to start plus middle. I'm going to call this mid date. And we're going to, again, console log it. And then we get another odd output. Once we console log this, console.log, we get a 1581796800000. All right. But what does that even mean? How do we translate that? What is 0 of this? 0 of this is the Unix epoch time, which was when? January 1st, 1970, which is when developers decided to start accounting for time. In other words, that's when they wrote the script to take care of time. It just happened to be a date. They could have chosen any date. There's really no relevancy to that date other than that was the one, lucky in the draw. Now, of course, we're not gonna do that manually. I mean, you can do the milliseconds and go exact, but JavaScript gives us a get time method, which basically can translate milliseconds into the date, because all it does is account from the first date, which is January 1st, 1970, to the current date that you're on. So all we do is mid. We're going to call this, think of a new name, calendar mid. Be set to, and here's the key part. We got to do the constructor again. That way it knows that it's not just, because sometimes in between the coding, it can get lost and it might think that it's a actual like num instead of like a date. So you just put it back in a date setting. So new date mid, which was that long string of numbers, that milliseconds, and you do dot get time method. Now, once you do the get time method and you console log console.log calendar mid, it comes down to Saturday, February 15th, 2020 at 11:30:00. Now, just like earlier, when we accounted for the leap year, we know that there's an extra day added to the calendar. Now, we need to account for the physical time, the clock. And every year, there is daylight savings. In between March 13th and November 6th, there's an additional hour added to your clock or removed, depending on how you look at it. It's daylight savings anyways. So now we need to take account for the additional hour. So what does that exactly mean? All that means is that the original value that from where we started from only shifted 1 hour to the front. So instead of like, just like we did 90 and 91, what was the actual date? I always forget. I have to Google it every single time. Right. So just like on a regular day basis, on a 365-day calendar, April 1st is 90, the 90th day of the year. On a leap year calendar, April 1st is the 91st day of the year. Therefore, midnight on a daylight saving time is actually 1 a.m. So we're going to reconstruct our recipe. Now that we know, then we need to take account for daylight savings and as well as leap year. Let's see what that looks like. We're going to restart. And now we're going to have let start date be set to new date, and it's the year, the month, the day, the time, and then let end date be set to new date 2023, because it's the fourth value in the array, 3, 1, and here is where we account for the hour. 1 hour, 0, 0. Boom. What do we do again? We just keep on following the same method that's the recipe that we already established, which is simple values without taking time into account. So it is end date minus start date over 2, and of course, plus start date. Why? Because this is only saying that in between this value and this value is the midpoint, but in order to add it to the first value, we need to then bring it back again. So we're going from the midpoint to the middle point, and then go to the maximum. So we just account for this space right here. This is the space that we don't care about the space anymore. We just care about this space. And we now, but we do know that there is the daylight savings time on March 13th. So we need to account for that hour. So this will be set to mid-date. And all we're going to do is pull our ingredient. And we're going to call this the date actual. And it's set to new date, mid-date, get time, and boom. You have Saturday, February 15, at midnight. And it's, of course, at Pacific Standard Time, taking account, what do we take into account? Daylight savings, leap year. And that's it. Those were the two variables that were not implicit in the problem. Thank you.